Right, I'm sitting here with Peter Humpreys, candidate for the Hamilton East by-election 2021, and you'd have to be blind to not notice we're having lunch at Anglican Action Cafe.
Yeah, it's a really good cafe and supports the Anglican Action services and stuff, and and so it gets people that have come out from institutions into the cafe, into the kitchen and stuff to do some work, and it's a good place to support.
Oh, that's cool. I only barely knew this place existed, to be honest, until you mentioned it as a place to do this. But anyway, so we're truly in an interesting part of the community. So now, with the election, I do have to ask, what's your views on catering for cyclists and alternative transport? Because that's been my focus for this election. So this by-election. So I'm asking everyone, where do you stand on those issues? But we'll go into a few other things as well. But I thought I'd just start with that. So where do you stand on the whole alternative transport and bringing communities together via their transport?
Oh, totally supportive. I mean, I see you in the park. I've got a special needs daughter and I've got a special bike, and we cycle around everywhere, wherever we can, But at the moment, it's recreational. It's not from A to B. But I want my ability to be able to cycle my daughter from A to B as well. For instance, during the lockdown, we were everywhere. The whole city was our landscape, to cycle through, and we could just go anywhere we wanted. It was fantastic. We'd go across the bridge, I cycle and my daughter just sits there flapping her wings, and we're just away, But I want that to be a part of everybody's routine. I've seen the figures since 2017. There's been a 20% increase in cycling activities in Hamilton, and only a 4.7% increase in car usage,
That's interesting.
And I think that's got a lot to do with the council's direction. They are pushing for this. They have done different things to the infrastructure to make it easier. Also, the other thing I've noticed is I do the river rides in Narrawaya, and I go to Narrawaya because I used to live there.
Okay.
And I've noticed the amount of people that there's a cafe there called Breaking Bread, and the amount of people there on bikes on Sunday morning, And when you actually look at the bikes, they're mostly electric bikes, and it's a different person that your normal sort of cyclist, it's like people
it's not your lycra-clad loonies.
No, it's not your MILFs, so it's like, and that's changed the whole thing, having electric bikes, and I think the increase to the city's numbers is possibly because some of that is because of electric bikes. I don't know what the figures are for using the scooters around the city, but I see a lot of people using the scooters as well.
Yeah. It was interesting you mentioned about cycling around in lockdown because I go everywhere on a bike. During lockdown, I started taking the longest route I possibly could imagine to get to the supermarket when I had to go to the supermarket. So technically, I was going to the supermarket, but I was riding down the middle of the main street and things like this because there's just no cars around.
There was absolutely nothing, we'd cycle every day because I live 750 metres from the city centre. I'm very close to where you are.
Yeah.
And we used to do a cycle around the cordons, through the bush, up to Boundary Road, and then down Boundary Road, and across the bridge, and then into town. And then we used to have a bit of a snack in town, and then cross the Cordons Bridge on the way back. But we could go anywhere in town, and it was actually quite nice. You could talk to people who were walking their dogs or out for exercise and stuff like that. It was a real leisurely pace.
And what I find interesting with cycling is I've been cycling all my life. That's been my form of transport, other than being a passenger in a vehicle, right? And two things I always found funny is the fact that people found cycling an odd thing to do, and that people also had not cycled. Like, I've been involved with a few groups now, and we're getting people coming along that have not cycled since they were at high school, right? And they're in their 40s and 50s and haven't ridden a bike since they were 15.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And the thing is, most of these people for people like me who ride all the time,
Yeah.
we're comfortable with the current system,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And the road. We're used to looking out for ourselves and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like a lot more done.
Yeah.
And I feel the council's going in a good direction. But I'm always aware and looking around and prepared for anything.
You have to be, yes. Yeah.
These people that have not been on a bike since they were 15, they're the ones that are apprehensive about getting back on a bike because it's brand new to them again, effectively, and they don't feel necessarily overly safe on the road. And this is where some of the initiatives, I noticed they're making a change with a piece on Victoria Street where you turn into Claudelands.
Yeah.
They separated that out. Now they're putting concrete barriers between the traffic and the cycle piece.
Yeah.
And we're going to probably see more of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we have just the right council at the moment. We have a set of councillors that are very supportive of this.
Yeah.
Yes, it comes down to funding and things like this, but they're very supportive of the concepts and the ideas and are trying to accomplish these things.
Yeah.
And we're now getting, on average, I've noticed most of you candidates are receptive to a lot more cycling initiatives than 2-3 elections ago.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, there's been a lot of support for it. And this council's been quite functional, you know. It's been sort of strong leadership, but risk-adverse leadership, which is that sounds like an oxymoron, but in reality, but in reality, that's quite a good style of leadership, you know. It's where you make sure that all the other councils are on board, you make sure the community is on board because it's risk-adverse, you know, if you do make any decisions. So I think, we've got a good council at the moment. Yeah.
There's a lot more consultation with other councillors and the public than there has been in the past. I know for a fact that they are listening to certain cycling groups.
Yeah.
Because I'm part of one of them.
Yeah.
And they listen to and take feedback from that group as to what needs to be looked at and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's not the only sector they're doing it in. For instance, it looks like we're going to get Māori wards. Now, if you'd told me 2 elections ago that we're going to have Māori wards, I would have laughed in your face because I couldn't have imagined the council set up then being receptive to that. The council we've got now is far more receptive to these things.
I think a few months ago they weren't so receptive, but they realised there was going to be a public backlash.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by risk-adverse leadership, you know. So they actually went and consulted, which was necessary. Over 900 submissions, Lance, for the Māori wards. I was one of them. And I was in chambers when it happened, and I was actually quite emotional. That's just part of accepting that there is a Treaty of Waitangi when we do that stuff, you know. So that was crucial for me that went through, and for many others. And having 12 councillors vote on it, fantastic.
And essentially, a council is there to not just manage the city, but give the people what they want, in effect, that what the majority of the population sort of want. Cycling's just one of them. This whole, with cycling and the Māori wards and a lot of these things, we're getting potentially a city where we're bringing people back together. Yes, their experiment with Rostrevor Street was a little bit out there and it didn't seem to work. I think they picked the wrong street for that. Ward Street changes seem to be quite good. I might be biased because I'm a cyclist, so you know, if they'd said they were shutting down that end of Ward Street, I wouldn't grizzle either. But you know, but projects like that bring communities closer together. Some of the connecting pieces that I went on a ride with Bike Waikato a while back, and there was a new bridge that had just gone across a bit of a gully, right? Yeah. That you can cycle across. And don't ask me where it is because I can't bleeding remember. But it's connected 2 sides of a gully together so people can ride and carry on through. A lot of the new suburbs now are being geared towards both on-road and off-road cycling initiatives.
Yeah.
So there's paths that you can ride along that are completely off the road that get you through.
Yeah.
Plus, there's the standard cycle lanes
along the roads. Yeah.
Which means you're not trying to squeeze cycle lanes into a skinny road.
Yeah.
The roads are being made the appropriate width, which is good. But that comes back to this whole bringing the community together, which I think we've needed to do for a while. And I was just wondering, what other initiatives do you think are, like, the big ones apart from cycling is the three waters and safety in our city and these sorts of things?
Yeah, and also what we don't get is around the arts, we spend very little money on the arts, We've got a fantastic garden just up the road from here, in fact. It's a world-class garden, it's artistic, it's flamboyant, it's sort of adds massive value to the city. We need to do that Boom, for instance, have put in 60 murals in Hamilton in the last 7 years, There's been a lot of artistic endeavours in Hamilton, but the actual amount of funding that's going into art is very little. So we need to be... Also with COVID, we've got a situation where people are not going abroad. They want to stay local, and they have to stay local mostly. And Hamilton could be a place to come to if we bring that concept of the gardens into the city central. It makes it a more livable city. It makes you a place where you want to live, because we are going to go up in the city. That's without doubt. We need more housing, and it's going to happen. So that needs to accommodate people living in the city. Art does that, People. I'm a visual. I like paintings. I live in a 110-year-old house, art and crafts house.
Okay.
I love my art. I have friends who have tattoo shops and stuff like that, so I like that sort of... I like when I walk across the Cordon Bridge. I shouldn't say this because it's probably not good for prospective council, but I like the graffiti. I don't like the tags, but I actually like the art. I get a thrill out of seeing something there that wasn't there the day before. I don't want people going onto the railway tracks and doing this stuff, but but the arts on the walls and stuff.
But if that skill and colour could be used a lot wider in better places. Or if even along the railway line, they officially have a time where it's actually shut off so they can actually make it look better. Because I think we need to get away from the grey, drab buildings. And
without
same
a
as
doubt.
if we're going to, our city is going to build outwards as well as upwards.
Yeah.
It's going to go in both directions, probably.
Yeah.
Right now, just life says that you're not going to be able to control it going in just one direction or the other, really. It's going to go in both directions. It's just the proportions that are the issue. But if it's going up and we're going to have more central city stuff, buildings and high-rises and stuff, I think, and I was just wondering if what's your thoughts on this, do you think we could better use places like Garden Place, which is smack in the middle of the city, for things like markets and, to be able to wander in, effectively like going to the farmer's market on a Sunday, but something similar to that, so that instead of going to the supermarket all the time, you can go and get more local, specialised foods and goods and stuff from in there.
And that probably goes back to your question about the street experiments,
Yeah.
For me, my preference would have been... Everybody has their different preference, and we all should be able to speak quite freely about it, because quite often both sides take ownership and they get quite upset if you critique or whatever. Well, it's true. One of the things I would have preferred was Alexandra Street locked off to through to Ward Street, the other part of Ward Street.
Oh, yeah.
Have the whole of Garden Place. Do it during the school kids' holidays. And so have lots of activities on there, no traffic going through there, safe area for everybody to be. It wouldn't have actually caused that much damage to the local businesses.
No.
It would have been,
It would have made quite a nice walking precinct in there at that time.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And because there's a fair bit of room in there, you don't, and if there's no cars in there, you don't have a problem with kids zipping around on scooters or skateboards or something like that.
That would have been my option, but I thought it was a good venture. I thought we haven't actually it hasn't costed us anything. It came from and said TA, so the money was there to do it. On the 17th of August, we're going to have the results from all the other cities throughout the country. They've all done it differently. Raglan, Auckland, everywhere's done it differently. So the results will come back in, and we can use that result to make things better in the future. I've been involved in a lot of research projects, academic research projects, as as running the shelter and also as co-chair of the New Zealand Coalition to End Homelessness. The ones that we did that were just written experiments, interviews and all that, actually never came to anything. They ended up on a shelf in the university somewhere.
Oh, okay.
But the ones that did come out were the ones that we did, like Te Puia Marae, when that was the doors were open for the homeless and they could come in there and they could see how it worked and see what was needed. When I was involved with the Tauranga Moana night shelter, when we had actually started it was nothing there, and they started it and they opened the doors and they worked out what was needed. So it's that research in action, and this street experiment was research in action, and that for me that's what.
Is there anything?
I just want to go back to the arts one, because that's my cup of at the moment. I'll just tell you a story about how arts changed the city. In the late 1980s, early 1990s, I was living in Brightwater near Nelson.
Okay.
And a friend of mine, Susie, she opened a gallery. She was a potter and an artist, and she opened a gallery at the William Higgins Gallery just outside of Wakefield.
Okay.
And she wanted to promote it, so she decided that she would have a Wearable Arts Award night. So what happened was, we were all invited. I helped set it up, and I was on the smoke machine. And it happened. We got sponsorship from Tally's, from Montana, from Shay Elko, who used to own the cafe. So we had food and wine and all that kind of stuff there. So, what's her name? Oh, and I'm just sideline. My sister-in-law, who's an artist, she won the first prize in the first ever Wearable Art Award. So the following year, it got too big for William Higgins Gallery. It became a Nelson-wide event.
Okay.
It was in the Trafalgar Centre, and it grew and it grew. It grew so big that they could no longer have it in Nelson because there's only 60 to 70,000 people in Nelson, and the infrastructure was not there. They were having it in a place called the Trafalgar Centre, which was not big enough. So it eventually moved to Wellington. There's still a museum in Tahuna in Nelson now for the Wearable Art Awards.
Oh, okay.
But that's where it came from. And now Susie, my friend, is Dame Susie Moncrief, So she just used to live across the river to her and Jerry, But that's where that came from. So it just shows how art can change a city. And Nancy Kager, one of the arts advocates for Hamilton here, said that every dollar that we spend on art, you get $15 return, So what's the name? If people are saying, it's going to cost money and all that, just look at what happened in Nelson. Just look at the Wearable Art Award. That's an international art award, It's massive, So you can do that in Hamilton. We've got the foot in the door with the gardens, It's like, you go there and it's like a different world, And what's the name? If you can spread that sort of artistic flair into the city,
you just look at the attendance at the Fringe Festival that happens every year.
Yeah. So there's
the Boone Art thing. The number of people who around that time traipse around looking at the new art that's going up.
Yeah.
I think part of it's because in most people's everyday life, art's the happy space. It's when life gets tough and you spend 8 hours working or whatever, to be able to look at a nice piece of art on the way home.
Walk across Garden Place, look at the library,
Yeah.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
So we need more of that, and that's what it's about. Hamilton. It should be a livable city that we want to be in, and that we feel good about it. Yeah.
So we stick with the art thing. Is there any specific one thing you would like to see council do that you would at least make an attempt to get moving? Because if you do get on council, you've only got, a year and a half or thereabouts before there's an actual full election again. So, how much you get done in that time, debatable. But at least you could start getting an interest in something. And what would that thing be that you'd want to get the council contemplating
around the art side of things?
Yeah.
Well, we need to do something about founders. Okay, there was an article by Aaron Lehman of the Waikato Times in October 2019, and he estimated the cost of having the building empty since 2016 so far has cost $650,000.
For real?
For real, $130,000 a year it costs to keep it empty for maintenance. So by now it's probably over $1 million, So if we need to make a decision very quickly about that, so it doesn't cost. We're going to have to pay the demolition fees. We know that it's going to cost. Even if we turn it into a green space.
It's either you strengthen it or you bowl it down.
And it's not going to be strengthened. It's like it needs about 22 million spent in it. If we're spending 25 million on a new theatre plus the ongoing costs that's involved in that, So let's get something sorted about Founders. Let's do it now. Let's not wait till the next council comes in. Let this council sort it out now. We've left it too long. We've procrastinated too long. Yeah. A decision needs to be made. We can't afford to become. If that money was there, then give it to Creative Waikato so they can encourage other art things in Hamilton. If $130,000, that would be massive on their budget. Not enough, but it would be a help on their budget. Because at the moment, what they're going to get is $100,000 as long as another beneficiary puts in another a dollar for dollar. Otherwise, there's no extra funding. I looked at the multi-year grant funding the other day. And if you exclude SEAL, which is, to me, a youth organisation, it's artistic, it's theatrical, but it's a youth organisation. We need to be spending money on youth, and it needs to be a separate allocation,
Yeah.
If all the theatres combined, Creative Waikato, it's about 190,000 that is spent on the arts, You've got 4 or 5 workers at Creative Waikato. They don't get that much, the whole lot. The theatres, all the different theatres get it, and all that. Victoria on the... the Victoria Trust and all that, they all get it, but it's not actually that much spent on...
Not really,
no. We get some money from Creative New Zealand for the Creative Community scheme. That's people can apply for that now. But what's the name? A lot of other councils will put in some money to go with that, but we just get the basic thing from the... what's the name? Creative Waikato actually look after that and they manage it, but it's not an extra income on it. It's in the door and out the door, and it's so no, we definitely need to be spending more money.
Well, I always thought would be quite good with Founders Theatres if they could pick part of it and either, like, obviously they have to tear most of it down because it's not stable, but if they could rebuild part of it as either a piece of art or a small performance stage, right, would be interesting.
They've got the fountain has got quite a lot of historical. So also, the actual issue was the overhead flying stuff. It was the stuff above the stage, but then it became also there's structural issues as well. Yeah. So a decision needs to be made, and if I was in council now, I would be pushing for that to be made this term.
Because we really can't just leave it sitting there. I would rather them say, okay, we'll keep the fountain, we'll keep that working, and we'll build around that something for the community, be it arts or park or there's enough room to have. Well, it's being used as a car park at the moment. You can still use part of it as a car park for central city parking, which is something we're going to need, while still having the fountain and have it done up to be another interesting location. Just
and then going back to the streets experiments, I was just thinking, the V8s were here for a few years. They cut off the city in half, basically. They for months before and weeks after, we couldn't go into that part of the area. Hardly anybody in Hamilton could actually afford to go. The businesses never made any money out of it. The only business that made money out of it was Montana Catering. They made a fortune out of it, But the local businesses, nobody would go there at night because they'd gone home. They're too tired after watching the racing, And half the communities couldn't even actually afford to go. And it
was a pain in the ass when you lived. I lived in Frankton at the time, so I had a route to go and visit my father. Right. And when the V8 set up, I effectively had to double the distance, go a long way around. To and basically go through town to get to his place because my direct route went pretty much straight from Frankton through where Founders Theatre is and across that way. Well, of course, you couldn't do that when the V8s were there.
And I mean, the street experiment was for 4 weeks. The V8s went on a lot longer than that, and it was it's just basically cut the city in half. So I wasn't listening. I wasn't hearing many people complain then. So
no, And it was amusing to see how many people complained about the streets thing when it was just an experiment that council weren't wearing the cost of to try it. Yet the V8 cost the city a fortune.
And just going back to that stuff around the councils not being dysfunctional, And the press needs something to get hold of, and it's very challenging to get hold of. And if the council's quite functional, in the past you could have picked on quite a lot of stuff, but at the moment it's quite challenging. So they've picked on the streetscape. They've said, "Oh, it's permanent paint. It's this, it's that," And what sort of paints would you have used? I've done quite a bit of painting in my life, I know that paint doesn't last very long if it's not semi-permanent, so you had to use permanent paint, you had no choice. It would have rained and it would have gone the next day.
Apart from anything else, even if it is permanent, it will wear down eventually.
I know.
But so you've got a colourful piece of street now. Paint your white lines over it. It's still got some colour there, fine, who cares, But I wondered when all that hit the media, I wondered how much of that was newspaper reporters desperate for something to write about.
And that's what I say. If the council's functional, it's actually hard to get stories, So,
That's what I personally think the council could do with doing something that's going to get the attention of the media in a positive way and get some interesting stories, because I think at the moment the media are desperate for something that they can run with, and if the council gave them something positive, the media would pretty much promote it without any effort whatsoever, because they're starving for interesting news. But is there anything else you'd like to say before we...
One of the biggest concerns I have as well, whoever gets into the office, whoever wins this by-election needs to be really concerned about the three waters, That's going to... Waipa and Waikato currently have meters, It won't be long before we have meters here in Hamilton. Once you've got it commodified, once you've got the watered down to 4 organisations rather than the 67 councils, that is a sellable commodity, It's happened in Britain, it's happened in Ireland, it's happened in Wales. It slowly gets sold off, and suddenly somebody in New York owns your water, Somebody in France owned the Welsh water for quite a while,
For real?
Yeah, it's for real. So I'm not sure if they still own it, but it's probably transferred hands many, many times before. We've got to be really cautious, and we've got to ask. We can't just sit on our hands and just wait and be told by central government what's happening with this water. We need to ask the questions. We need to know how Mana Whenua is going to be involved.
Yeah.
We need to know what's going to happen, how... it's not going to be able to be sold off, all that kind of stuff. We need to have the rules in there now, and we can't just wait to see what the council, central government dictates. We need to make the rules as council. We've spent a lot of money on the water systems here in Hamilton, on purifying the water at Puketi and stuff like that. Well, Auckland hasn't, Wellington hasn't, So we've invested as ratepayers a massive amount of money. The rates are going to go up 8.9%. 4.5% of that is a regulatory charge by government towards the waters, and we should be pushing back at that, because we've been giving water, regional council's been giving water to Auckland, and there's been all that going on in the past few months, the past 6 months, in fact. So whoever gets in there needs to actually have their finger, they need to have the right sense of social justice around this stuff. How is the person going to be able to, how the people that don't have much are going to be able to, how are the renters going to be able to afford a hike in the water costs, all that kind of stuff. We've actually got to be really cautious about it.
So do you feel that the water, how we pay for the water, should stay similar to what it is now, rather than being metered and getting a separate bill, like your power bill or anything like that?
Ask anybody in the Waipa or the Waikato if their water has got any less in cost, other than what they were paying in the general rates before. Now they've got meters. It has not. I own property out in Narawaya, and my rates stayed the same basically, but there was an added cost onto it of water meterage. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes it makes it easier to sell off eventually. We just see that. I was reading the Herald this morning. Auckland is selling off part of its council roles in infrastructure stuff like parking and different stuff like that. This is what we've got to be really careful in Hamilton, that we don't do that. In the end, it costs us more. The staff at the council are not sure whether they've got job security and all that kind of stuff. So we've got to be really cautious about that, Lance.
Yeah, and as soon as it goes to a money-making venture like a private company, their focus is on limiting cost and increasing turnover, and that never goes well for the public. And water is one of those things that a single entity shouldn't own water and sell it to the people who live there.
There's an economist called Guy Standing, and he came out of the university and I've read a few of his books and stuff, and he goes on about certain commons, certain ownership that should remain with the public, the necessities of life, and water is a necessity of life, and that should be owned by the public.
Oh, well, thanks very much for your time. Good luck in the election.
Thank you very much, Lance.
And it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Yeah. No, it's a bit of a lottery. But we'll just see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But thanks anyway.
Pleasure.
Cool.
Yeah.